This video has been brought to you by DataVinci Analytics Agency.
Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss about user ID tracking with GA4 and GTM. Essentially we are going to learn how to implement user ID from GTM for GA4. That does sound a little bit complicated, but believe me, this is going to be very simple. Or is it? Let us see. First off, what are we going to cover in this video? So we will start with the concept of user ID and learn what is a user ID and how is it different from client ID. And then we will learn how to generate and collect user IDs. We will also look into various methods to implement user ID tracking, including GTM modifications that are required. And in the end, we will also see the importance of handling user IDs in a privacy compliant manner. What things you need to keep in mind or what steps you need to take. So why this video? What are the challenges that this video aims to solve? So first of all, this would be the cross-device tracking issue, then conversion attribution accuracy issue, then the issues around data redundancy, wherein a same user is coming to us from multiple sessions, or issues around audience segmentation or user journey insights. So if you notice, all of these issues, reporting issues, are based on how a user is being counted in our tracking system. So implementing a robust user ID would help you in resolving, if not all, some of the issues that we had discussed in this slide. So again, how this video would help you. So first of all, very basically, this would help you in understanding the concept of user ID and its benefits. And then this would also serve as a step-by-step guide to implement and track user ID, which would enable you for unified cross-device tracking. And then you would be able to do a long-term user behavior tracking. And this would be, needless to say, a very important part in calculating the user's lifetime value metric and other such metrics as well. So coming to the main content of the video. What is a user ID versus a client ID? Because both sound the same, but let me tell you, they are quite different. So user ID is a unique identifier that is assigned to each user when they interact with your website or application, so that we are able to track that particular user's activity across various sessions and devices. So this is the key phrase here: across various sessions and devices. And in contrast with client ID, the client ID is something that is automatically generated for each browser session and is specific to a device or a browser. That means a client ID is a temporary thing. So basically the basic difference would be that the user ID is consistent across sessions and platforms, whereas a client ID is generated for each session, for each browser session, for each user, and it dies. The client ID dies when a session dies. So that is the basic difference. So the key feature of user ID is that it persists across sessions or browsers or platforms. So it gives us some benefits to use user ID that way. The first benefit would be that it enables us to track a single user across multiple devices, thereby enabling us for cross-device tracking. It also allows for deeper insights into user behavior, their preferences and engagements, etc., which allow us to learn more or deeper user insights. And having a robust user ID in place would also allow us to reap the benefits of user-centric reporting and analysis. But needless to say, it would also improve our data accuracy as well. And before we jump into the details of tag management and how to set up user ID, let us first discuss what are the broad steps that we are going to take to implement user ID using GTM. So as an overview, the first step would be to generate and push a user ID to the data layer. So we are going to see how can we generate a user ID and how we are going to push that into data layer. And once that is pushed into the data layer, we will be creating a variable or appropriate variable how that user ID is getting pushed into our website's code. And then when that user ID is created and pushed, we would include that user ID in appropriate tags so that it is sent to the to GA4 platform, and GA4 understands it the way we want it to understand. Needless to add, we would also test and verify the setup using the GTM preview mode and GA4 debug view. And then in the end, we will ensure that our setup of user ID is privacy compliant. So without further ado, let's jump into the tag manager to set up user ID. So here we are in our Google Tag Manager, and I have already gone ahead and created a workspace and implemented the user ID tracking. But let's go through what variables and changes that we need to do to implement the user ID. But before that, let us preview our website once. So we'll click on preview and enter our website's URL. So this is hosted locally. And this is my dummy website. We need to have a login functionality into our app or website to use the user ID, because we need to identify the users to create a unique identifier for them. So using the test user email and password, I will log into my account, and we can see we have a login event here. And if I add items to the cart, I also have add to cart events. I can view the cart. I would have a view cart and other such events. I will do checkout. So I will see a begin checkout event right here. And then finally a purchase event. So let's go back to our tag manager here, and first of all what we need to ensure is that a user ID is being generated as a first step that we discussed in the overview in the previous slide. So when we logged into our account, there is a login event, and with that, if I expand this, you can see our user ID is being generated and pushed into the data layer. So this ID is being generated from the user's email, whatever email the user used to log into our account. So I'm also pushing this user ID into the cookie, and we can see our cookies by going to the applications here. Under cookies, there is a user ID right here, which has the same value as this. So what we are going to do is we are going to read that cookie into GTM and then use that variable into our tags. So to read that cookie as a GTM variable, we would go to the variable section in GTM and create a variable that reads the value of that cookie. To that, go down in the user defined variables and select new, choose a first party cookie, and here enter the cookie name. I've already done that, and if you would do that, it would look something like this. This is the cookie name that we have got from here, and we have named it accordingly. So that is done. We have created a variable successfully that is capturing the value of the cookie. Now we will go to the tag section, and where all the tags are listed, we would go directly to our Google tag, which is our configuration tag as well. And in the configuration parameters section, we would enter a new parameter, user ID. In the left hand side column is for the key and the right hand side is for the value. So we would enter user ID exactly like this, user underscore ID, and then to do this we would use the variable that we just created. If you would enter double curly braces, open curly braces, it would list down all the variables that can be used here. We would select the cookie variable that we just created, and we would save the Google tag. And now we would go to each of the GA4 events that we want to attach the user ID to, and for that we are using a approach that is called using event settings variable. So I have already added this event settings variable, but what you can do is you can create an event setting variable from the variable section itself. So if you would go to the variable sections again and then add on new, you could see a Google tag event settings variable here. You would select that and add a parameter. Here we would again enter user ID, and the value would be same as the first party cookie that we just created for user ID. We would rename it accordingly. I have already done that. I'm going to discard it, but you will save it. So that is done. This is my event settings variable that I had already created. So it should look the same for you as well. And now once the event setting variable is created, we would go back again to the tag section, open our GA4 tags. Let's say I want to add my user ID or this event settings variable to my e-commerce events. So I would go to open the tag, and under event settings variable, my event setting variable that I just created would be listed. I would select that and save the tag. I have already done that, so I do not need to save it again. You can just cross it. So that is our primary setup done. And if we preview our changes at this point, once having added the user ID parameter in the Google tag and the event settings variable containing the user ID and adding that to all the GA4 event tags, you can close this. We are again in the preview mode here. I will also open our GA4 debug view as well, so that we can see what GA4 sees. We will go ahead and do our test login using our test credentials. Use this. Enter my password for this. Now there should be a logging event. Should be coming shortly. Let's go ahead and do various actions on the website, such as let's add to the cart. We have added various items to the cart, and if you go to the tag assistant tab and click on any one of the custom events for add to cart and open the tag that has fired, we can see here our event settings variable is capturing the user ID that we are capturing from the cookie. So our GA4 tag, event tag, is getting the value of user ID. If we just open the debug view, we should be able to see this. Let me refresh this quickly. Okay. Once the user logs in, GA4 in debug view shows this icon with multiple objects. That means a user ID is set. So currently this user ID is active. You can see it from the right hand side bottom corner. And if we would open any of the add to cart events that we just performed and go to the user property option, our user ID would be set with item details and rest of the parameters as in place. So now from here on, every GA4 event tag needs that event setting variable. So because we are using one common tag for the e-commerce event, we need not add the event setting variable to another tags, but you might be using different tags for different events. So you need to add the event settings variable that we just added to this event to all the tags. like this. And if you would further go into the funnel, say view cart or remove from cart, and then do a checkout or place an order, which is really simple website. So a purchase is done directly without entering any details because this is a dummy website. And if we would go to the debug view here, or rather we can see the view cart event with user property set, which is the same which was generated for the user that has logged in. View cart begin checkout is also getting the user property, and purchase events should also get our user property. Basically all the events that would come after the user has logged in, and all the events that the user ID is attached to will get the same user ID, because in the config tag, as you would remember, we have also added this user ID as a configuration parameter. And if you are able to say this user ID being set into a debug mode, debug view in GA4, that means you have successfully implemented your user ID tracking. And now all you need to do is you need to go ahead and submit the changes. I will not create a version for this right now, but you can go ahead if you are satisfied with your changes and your tracking setup. You can publish the changes, and the changes would be live and it would be applied to your website, and you would start tracking user ID. So that is it. So now that we have implemented the user ID, what about the privacy regulations? So we need to keep in mind that we must anonymize the user IDs, and there should be no PIIs. As we discussed, the user email should not be used as a user ID. Instead, that email can be hashed. So basically what can be used as user ID is the hashed or encrypted usernames. Users should not be personally identifiable from their usernames or emails, etc. Unique identifiers generated by your CRM systems can also be used as user ID, or as we discussed already, hashed email, which are irreversibly hashed, can also be used as user ID. You should also take a note that what cannot be used as user IDs are plain text email addresses, because from that a user is identifiable. Full names or usernames or social security numbers should also not be used as user IDs. Apart from that, there are a few questions which arise after implementing user IDs. So first of all is user ID is not applied to historical data across sessions. That means if a user has in the past visited your website with some client ID, that client ID will not be backstitched with the user ID if you are implementing it today. Another question would be, yes, another doubt would be, yes, there is a length of characters on how long the hash or the user ID can be, because usually what happens is when you create a hashed string from email or any other data, that string gets to be very long, and that the hashed string is limited to 256 characters. Also, one constant question is whether the user ID can be merged across different GA4 properties. So the answer is no. The user ID is unique to a property, unique to a definite property, and you cannot merge user ID across GA4 properties from the UI. You can do that maybe after exporting your data and using unique keys or join keys in the raw data. But from the GA4 UI, you cannot merge your user IDs across GA4 properties. And it is important to note that after implementation, you may see a decline in number of users reported, because what we are essentially doing is we are stitching the different sessions of one particular user. So that is definitely going to count less towards our total number of users or active users. So you might expect a decline in number of users reported. So there you are, new superpowers unlocked with user ID implementation. And thank you from DataVinci. Signing off, may the force be with you.